welcome to A Girl, a Guy, and a Buffy podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Charles Swint.
And I'm your other host, Kate Balzer.
How's it going, Kate?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm peachy with a side of keen.
One of my favorite lines. It's like one of those lines you can easily slip into daily life.
It's a part of my everyday conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
Literally all the time.
I know.
Oh
I'm
my
like
goodness.
super excited about today's episode. I think more than I expected to be. Not for any particular reason, but like delving into the fashion and the costuming of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I was like, oh, I have way more to say than I expected.
It seems to be the case all the time. Like I always like we start preparing. I'm like, what am I possibly gonna say? Like, what do
Yeah.
I have to say about this? And then I'm like, oh wait, I actually have hella tons of things to say about this.
Yeah.
So as you can tell, we are going to be talking about fashion as we continue on our discussion of pop culture in Buffy the Vampire Slayer as our big season 2 topic. And, fashion is such a huge part of our popular culture. So we had to pay homage to the styles, the looks, and the fits of Buffy and the rest of the Scoobies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and for myself, granted, I'm I probably am also forgetting shows that might have also made an impression on me, but in the long term, I have to say, like, Buffy was probably one of the first shows that really made an impact on me with its costuming. Not in the sense of like fashion and, oh, I want to like wear that, but like I got how the costuming spoke to what was happening in this series.
You-
And I feel like it's not just because I love the show so much and I've watched it, like that was happening in real time when I was watching the original series. Like to me, that speaks to how freaking good the
Mhm.
costuming is on that show. I know I'm kind of like jumping ahead, but it really
No.
kind of surprised me how much like I can think back and think about looks and what that said about the show and the character and the moment for multiple characters over multiple seasons of the show that I just don't with most other shows.
Yeah, I mean the looks are iconic. I mean, there
Yeah.
are so many iconic looks on that show that really sort of speak to who these people are,
Mm-hmm.
um, and where they are in time and where they are in their lives
Yes.
as we go through it. And so I think it's a really um it's a really great storytelling device, and it's just again another testament of how good the story actually is and like the layers of storytelling that's going on this show that we can like dive into, because it's like it's not just like, oh, Buffy and Angel's love story. It's,
Right.
it's not the lighting, but it's also the looks that Sarah served up over the course. Like you can tell. It's so funny because I was watching something the other day. I forget, something in season 2 I was watching, and Buffy comes on screen and she's just wearing overalls, right? She's just wearing overalls. And
Yeah.
immediately she walks in and goes, oh, Buffy's sad.
Oh my gosh. I now refer to them as the overalls of pain
Like,
because, like, between seasons, I can't remember if it starts in season 1, but definitely season 2 and 3. Like, when those come out, something really horrible has happened to Buffy.
right,
Like, she's super sad.
I was like, oh,
Yeah, it's the overalls of pain.
yeah,
I love it.
yeah,
Like, I love that there's like she has that go-to outfit because, like, let's face it, I mean, I'm not going to speak for every, woman or a cisgender woman, but like I will say, like myself and a lot of people I know, like you have that outfit. Like if you're having a crap day or you don't have to be anywhere, like you're comfy, whatever it is,
right.
you have that like go-to outfit. So the fact that like she did on the show, I was like, yes, I'm here for it. It speaks so much to how they thought about the character, both the actress, the costumer, the costume designer, the dresser, the producers. I love it.
Yeah, it's really great. So, the show starts in 1997 and runs through 2000. So we're looking at like the fashion and the styles of that era. I guess to do some of our level set, we want to talk about fashion, right? What is fashion?
Yeah.
Um, Not fashionic. But but fashion. Um, and fashion is like the dominant style within any given culture at a certain time.
Right.
And so fashion has to do with trends and what's popular, and popular ways of dressing during like a specific era.
So kind of moving into like out of fashion, that's obviously across culture. It's like everywhere. Even if you like not choosing to have a sense of style is having a sense of style. Like choosing not to engage in fashion is in itself like says something about your sense of style. But when we come to like film and television and theater, costuming, it takes it to like the next level. So it's not just that you're what the clothes are should be good looking or should be on trend. It's that it should, as we said earlier, like help tell the story. It should represent the character. So it really it's delves into it in such an emotional, psychological level of storytelling, of
You've
using clothing for storytelling.
you literally just like you saying that really took me into like The Devil Wears Prada, where she's like, "You think your absence of style means something?" Where all these people spent all these hours and all this money just so that you could pick this out of a bargain bin and pretend like you don't care.
It's it's very true.
I love that. That's right there.
Yeah, I have this. I do. I wouldn't be me if I didn't bring a quote. But I found this from the. Funny enough, from the when I was doing my research from the Berkeley College of Music's website.
Huh.
But there was a great like short paragraph that summarizes what costume designers do. And so I'm just going to read that real quick. The quote is: "Costume designers tell a story through clothing, using the language of fashion to help express aspects of a play or opera setting, mood, and characters. The job is about much more than putting together a nice outfit, requiring a deep understanding of stage production, a thorough knowledge of fashion and costuming history, and an eye for creating standout visual designs. With each wardrobe element and accessory, costume designers bring the characters and settings to life and immerse audiences and actors in their time period, culture, and world." End quote. I mean, obviously, that also all applies to film and television. It was using live theater in this case, but I mean, and that's basically what we just said, but I thought it like summarized it in such a beautiful way.
Yeah. Um, I did costumes when I was in college.
You
I was
did.
I was a costume designer. I
I'm
worked in
learning something new. I did not know this.
this is when we were talking about this, I was like, "Oh, I'm going to talk about this because I don't think we have talked about this."
No, I love
Um,
it.
so yeah, I was in
You're like
college.
Shrek, unfolding like an onion.
I was working in our costume shop, because we had to do shop hours, and so we either could work in the scene shop building sets or work in the costume shop building
Ah.
building costumes. So I was like the work study assistant in the costume shop my senior year, and so part of that was I got to design costumes for the show that was going out on tour. It was like a children's show that was going out on tour. So I got to design their costumes, which was really fun and a lot of fun. And when we did Oedipus too, I was like in charge of we had like a whole Greek chorus, and I was in charge of like putting together and draping all of their like um we had like fabric that we were all wearing that was and I was in charge of like draping everybody and putting that all together. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It is it's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of things that go into it because you are trying to tell this again, your storytelling, and so you want to make sure that you're putting people in the right clothes and that fit their character, and also that make them the actor feel comfortable
Hmm.
in that. And I think that's a huge part of it too, is making people feel comfortable in the clothing that they're wearing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it fits with what they're doing too. I mean, just thinking about in terms of Buffy, the fact of when you're doing a lot of the stunt work and the fighting, although even though in the early seasons Buffy would go out in these like cute mini dresses sometimes
Hmm.
to slay, but if you think about it, a lot of the time she was wearing like athletic wear or
Right.
something she could move in, which actually that was probably one of the first things that stood out to me about the series.
Hmm.
Is I was like, most of the time, particularly in those high school years, like when she would go slay, I was like, she's wearing sleigh appropriate attire. I totally noticed that because I
Right.
feel like sometimes a lot of previous teen shows and maybe even subsequent teen shows would make it more about like being fashionable. And you're
Hmm.
like, I don't know. I mean, maybe certain teenagers would dress that way in that moment, but I always felt like I was like, would a teenager really wear that? Like
Hmm.
if they're doing something that like requires them to be physical or down and dirty, like whatever it is, but they're like
Right.
dressed to the nines. That's always like a peeve of mine in general in TV and movies.
Hmm.
When somebody is like made up to the hilt in a moment where they're not like they're just waking up in bed and they're in like full make hair and makeup, and I'm like, mm-mm.
Right. Right.
Like that doesn't happen. And then that's more on like other shows, like not on Buffy, but I really noticed that in the series. So I appreciate that
Yeah.
from the costuming.
And it's funny because you said like her skirts, she wears a lot of mini skirts in
Yeah.
season one and
Yeah.
season two too. Season two too. Season two as well. And so it's interesting that they have to start pulling her out of those mini skirts because it's not appropriate to wear for slaying. It's not conducive. But she will rock a boot. She will rock a heeled boot. But
Yes.
she's never in like stilettos or high heels or anything
Right.
like that because it doesn't make sense. Like
Right.
it's completely impractical for her to do that. But I think we see over time that her style changes, and I think the
Yes.
more that she learns about her calling, gets involved with the slang, and does all of that stuff, the more that she starts to realize, like, practically, okay, I these mini skirts aren't the aren't the deal,
Yeah.
but I still want to look super cute. So why can I wear that super cute for slay? It's like going slaying day or night. Like, I
Yeah.
need an outfit. I need an
That can
outfit that can go
transition.
from day to that can transition from day to night
Yeah.
and slay both my day and nighttime look while I slay.
Yes. Yes.
So I think they were really smart about how they did that. And even her, you know, the transition of like her going to college and then after Joyce dies and her how her style changes when she's more of the maternal figure for Dawn and all of that
Right.
stuff. There is her costumes. There is a story arc of who this
Oh,
woman is, and it is
yeah.
beautiful and it's so well done. It's so smart.
Yeah. We'll kind of take it back a step. The show had four costume designers during the series, the longest being Cynthia Bergstrom, who was from season 2 through season 6. And it's interesting. So the season 1 costume designer was Susanna Puisto. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. And then there were two costume designers. I think one did like the first half and the other did the second half in season 7, and that was Terry Dressbach and Matthew Van Dyne. And I was reading an interview with Cynthia Bergstrom. So she's really like the one who set what we think of as the costume style for the series. I mean,
Mhm.
she's really who had the greatest impact because she was there for 4 seasons, 4 or 5. And one of the things that she said was part of the reason she was brought in, I think she said it was the network. They wanted, I guess, Buffy in particular to have less of a retro style, which is interesting because
Mhm.
I don't necessarily think of season 1 as retro, but I guess some of it could have that kind of like 60s vibe. Like some of those dresses
Mhm.
have elements of that 60, like late 60s, early 70s, maybe. Um, and they wanted her to be much more like current in her look.
All right.
So you can kind of see that transition during season 2. And I think that's just really interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think you can see it in season one where her styles do, and I think we've said this before, like her style in season one very looks like very specifically like of like 1990, like it has a
yeah.
very specific viewpoint, and it's so of a specific time. Um,
And it feels more California to me. Like
right,
none of the looks she had in season one do I feel like I saw in my suburban
right,
East Coast state
and
or,
it's
school.
yeah, and it was supposed to be this idea that yes, we want to like put California style into it, but it also needs to look like it could be anywhere USA because that's what
Yeah.
Sunnydale is supposed to be. It's a Southern California town, yes, but it's also any town USA.
Yeah.
And so having those things coexist at the same time while still being fashionable and
Yeah.
still being current and maybe a little bit ahead of trend, but not being so like far ahead of trend that you're like setting trends,
Right.
staying but you're staying trendy.
Right. And one of the things that I think about the show, and I this was brought to my attention in doing the research from a piece by Lee Clemens off of the Slayage
Mhm.
website, which is the academic website that has all the Slayage journal.
Yes.
And from her piece, Real Vampires Don't Wear Shorts, the aesthetic of fashion in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that the show was fashionable, but it wasn't necessarily fully teen relatable because it was sort of connecting, it was using fashion to bridge the teen storylines, like the reality of the teen storylines with the unreality of the supernatural elements.
Hmm.
So it was kind of this step above your average teen fashion, or sorry, your average costuming for like a teen drama,
Hmm. Yeah.
which I never really thought about, but I would agree with. Because it's interesting, like so um Cynthia, the costume designer, she would use like national chains and like stores where you could get the stuff, but it was a little bit more high end because she pulled
Hmm.
from like Barney's, Neiman Marcus. I mean, Macy's is, more lower level department store,
Right.
and Fred Siegel. Like that's not anywhere that most teens, if you don't come from like a wealthy background, are going to be shopping at that
Right. And there's not a Barney's everywhere either.
Oh
Like
no,
you're,
exactly.
that's not something like maybe you might find a Neiman Marcus in your area if you're lucky.
Right.
But you're definitely not
And
gonna
this is
find it
also
in like the Midwest or whatever.
no, not unless you're in Chicago, maybe.
Yeah.
Other than that, and it's pre-internet shopping.
Right, right. So I mean, she's probably doing a whole lot of sourcing of this through contacts and things like that and
Right.
with buyers. And it's interesting because even talking about sort of the elevated look of what everyone was wearing, and I think that is something to note that like everything was like pushed just a little bit forward more, where you're
Hmm.
looking when you look at say Dawson's Creek,
Yeah.
they're in jeans and t-shirts, they're in like khakis and a polo, like
Yeah.
it's very like we went to the Gap and got this. We went
100%.
to, we were at the mall and we bought this thing, and I think about other shows that I watch, other teen shows that I watch. I recently did a rewatch of this old Nickelodeon show called 15. Um that had Ryan Reynolds on it, a very young baby Ryan Reynolds on it. And like and it's about kids who are, and it was like a 90s show or whatever, but it was a who were 15 years old. And but like all of their style, like everything was very like, oh yeah, this looks like the 90s. And it was very like off the rack,
Hmm.
right? Where where like stuff like Cordelia wears is maybe I saw it on a store, but it's like I feel like everything that they're wearing was like that's on the mannequin. Like I saw that in the
Yeah.
display window, or I saw like it's the thing that's being pushed forward. Um, And this is how to style this look. This is how you should dress or whatever. Like that's what it felt like, or this is how you could look if you had the money.
Yeah, exactly. But then, even though their looks might not be something you see on the teens around you, and maybe they are, I'm just saying, like, in my experience, but Xander and Willow's, in contrast, is not high fashion.
Mm-mm.
It's most people would probably say, like, I wouldn't want to wear their outfits. They're kind of dorky. And yet they're also not something you commonly see on
Right,
other teens. They give them a very distinct style compared to, like you said, like Dawson's Creek, which is just like
right.
pretty much felt like common what every other teenager was wearing.
Right. But even like Xander's choice to like the choice to put Xander in sort of loud prints and
Right.
these weird like button down shirts and all of that stuff again, which was very 90s because I had some of those like print shirts too.
Yeah.
Um, I had a whole polka dotted outfit once. I mean, shirt and pants to match. It was, but it was it was very distinctive because I, like you said, I don't think a lot of people were necessarily gravitating to that, but it also kind of puts you in sort of this like nerdy outsider
Yeah.
place, and it designated nerdy outsider, and
Oh,
then and
it
Willow with
told the
her,
story.
yeah, it told the story, and with Willow with her fuzzy sweaters and all of that
Yeah.
stuff, and a lot of like corduroy and
Yeah.
like for whatever reason. And it's so funny because I don't know why I associate corduroy, not so much now, but back then, where it was like, it felt like a nerdier fabric. There was
Hmm.
something to me about wearing corduroy. I remember feeling very uncomfortable as a kid wearing corduroy because, like, it used to be so rough that you could hear it. And so there was something about that. Um, you
Yeah.
know,
Well, it definitely gave like 1970s Brady Bunch vibe to me. Like
yeah.
when I think corduroy, that's back then that's probably what I would have thought. Um yeah, and I think about one of her most, to me, iconic outfits from early days, which she gets forced to wear in The Restless Dream, is what Americans would call a jumper. That is not the British version, which is a sweater to Americans, but literally like the dress that's like a jumper. It's the corduroy jumper.
Oh yeah.
And I think she wears like a blue and green plaid shirt underneath.
Hmm.
Basically it's like when she's in the dream and then all of a sudden she's in front of the class giving a book report and she's like, I didn't know I had to do a book report and her hair is long again. It's
Yeah.
that outfit. Like
Yeah.
that just, it really did, to quote Cordelia, scream like the softer side of Sears, whether it
Yeah.
was from Sears or not. But
Yeah.
it did. It like screamed a young woman who had not developed her own sense of style, and her mom is like picking out her clothes, is doing her shopping for her kind of
Right.
situation.
Yeah.
It just said so much in that very simple outfit.
Hmm. Agreed. Agreed.
So one of the other things that I found in doing research, which I loved because it's so true, is how much leather is a part of the entire series style, not Buffy specific
Oh
character.
yeah,
Because
sure.
so many, like both heroes and villains are like wearing leather all the time.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk. Can we talk about the villains for
Yeah.
just a minute and
Yeah, absolutely.
amazing the amazing stuff like Drusilla and that black slinky little like slip dress that she wears. It's
Uh-huh.
so amazing, and she just like that's one of those things where she is wearing that dress, right? Where she is
Yeah.
just like she knows how to work the dress and move the and her like her stylization and her movement, and that she just works that costume all over the screen. Like
Yeah.
it's so great. It's so great. Um
Well, for me, one of the Drusilla's standout dresses is actually what we see her first appear in, is
mhm.
that white dress. And
Oh
in
yeah.
thinking about it, because as we eventually learn, she grew up during the Victorian era.
Mhm.
era. She was turned in 1860. And that is those style of dresses are pre-Victorian.
Mhm.
So it would have been like not the style she grew up in. So it was curious like why that style of dress, because I love that empire uh style of
Yeah,
dresses. I
the
mean, I think you have
Empire
to have the
West.
right body type for it, but it's a great style of dress. And so, funny enough, again, in doing my research, there actually was a quote from Cynthia Bergstrom in an article in a website called Fashionista, why she chose that look for Drusilla.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, to be fair, they probably didn't know she was a Victorian era person at the time because that
Right.
came later. So, this is the quote from Cynthia. Quote, I grew up watching horror films and creature features from the 60s and 70s on rainy Saturday afternoons. I just remember the women were always dressed in ethereal, sort of Josephine esque bodices, very much like the Napoleonic era. And I did draw on a painting of Josephine Bonaparte. I was just like, that is so Drusilla, end quote. So I love that. I was like, that's what she had in mind, and it so comes across. And I think it does. She does this like almost floatiness,
Hmm.
and the white empire waist dress just adds to that like lovely floatiness that she
Yeah.
does when she enters the scene.
And because she is somebody who is like, you think she's so above the clouds and like
Yeah.
head in the clouds and the stars and everything, like the way that she moves and all of that. Um, and I would be curious to to ask Juliet, like, because I know a lot of times for actors, you study, you do the part, and and you do your blocking, and you think you have the character, but then the character really, really comes alive when you put on the costume. Like when you put
Hmm.
on I've it's happened to me, and I know like almost every actor I know says that once I put on the costume, then
Yeah.
I feel like then I have it because then it sort of envelops me. Then that's really who I am because what you're wearing can inform how you move. And so I wonder if she already had some of those like flowy movements
Hmm.
as part of her character, or if like putting on the costume sort of informed some of that movement that she had.
Yeah.
But it's so great, and I think it's great too that they all with the vampires in general, like they each had their own style, and they each dressed according to like, well, I mean, they dressed kind of according to the era that you know, where they were turned, and some, but in some sort of like modern day, um, but with like maybe a little bit more modern day twist. Um, with the exception, I think, of Spike. I think Spike sort of like they found a look. He found that Billy Idol look and just was like, nope, this is it. I'm gonna
Yeah.
rock this for the rest, like for all eternity, because this is it right here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you could make an argument that as strong as the costuming from the beginning was, that Drusilla and Spike really had the first iconic look.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the exception of, I'm sorry, I'm going to take that back. The first iconic look probably is actually Buffy and Prophecy Girl in the white dress with the leather jacket.
Sure. Yeah.
But like second to that is Drusilla and Spike.
Well,
And
what do you think about? I mean, and what do you think about Darla in that schoolgirl outfit? Like,
yeah,
you,
I mean, that's true too. But it's not like her long-term look.
yeah,
Um, you know,
her look
it
keeps changing over
it
over the
keeps
course.
changing because, as we said in a previous episode, they're constantly refiguring out who she is and how they want to use her. So I don't see that so much as like her iconic look as so much as her costume in order
Mm,
to get her a victim.
right, right,
Whereas like Drusilla and Spike are, very clear what,
right. Yeah,
they're
that's
they're
true.
sort of, she brings in the early 1800s English dress look, Napoleonic era look, and then throw kind of amps it up with like a vampy, um, kind of punk goth style to it. And then Spike obviously goes full on punk. And then as we learn later, that his coat, his duster
Yeah.
means so much more than just a punk, being in the punk style.
Right. It's a second skin to him. It's
Right.
that,
And why that
and
is.
why that is because of Nikki. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um and it's very interesting because they'd use like our main vampires or their costumed so well. And the lesser vampires are as well. And I think
Hmm.
it's really interesting that, the like our main vampires that we get, Drew and Spike and Angel, they're all very much high fashion, like again,
Yeah.
trending. But then usually other lesser vampires are all like out of date. Everything like they're in it, they're either just buried in their suit from their funeral,
Right.
or they're like if they're out in the world, they just look off. They
Right.
are stuck in the time in which they died. And so it's so weird, because she has that line. She was like, "Oh my God, can you find a vampire?" And she's like, "Yeah, that guy right there. I mean, he looks like DeBarge."
Yes. Well, and what's great about that moment is two things. Giles looks down on her because she's not using her Slayer senses to find a vampire, but it shows how she is so she pulls from other things
Hmm.
for her, as a Slayer, and she uses her, the girl side of her in a way
Hmm.
to hone in on that vampire because she's like, I know fashion that is so out of date. He has to be a vampire. And then of
Only
course all that you see that evolve as she develops as a Slayer and she hones those skills.
right.
So you don't see her rely on fashion choices anymore. But I love that moment.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting to see even like all the henchmen and everything like that are all out of date. What's his name? The guy who's the smart vampire that's a part of Drew and Spike's gang who tries to read the
Oh,
book. I can't remember his name. The one with the glasses.
yep,
Uh,
it's because you asked me. Now I can't remember his name.
um, but like even he's like out of fashion and out of like he's dressed very like, you know, turn of the century. He's very, he's got the ruffled collar and all of that stuff. Of a very like Anne Rice, like
Yes.
very Interview with the Vampire.
Yes.
So it's interesting those specific choices where you have these two people who are very contemporary and in the now and have this sort of trending style
Yeah.
surrounded by these people who are dressed completely out of fashion.
Yeah. By the way, his name is Dalton.
Dalton, there we
Yes.
go. Dalton. Awesome.
Speaking to the unchanging style of particularly the vampires, but, all the demons and vampires that she faces, it also speaks to how the younger characters, their style is changing more often, which
Hmm.
speaks to that age. And that's what you're going through. There's a lot of change versus any of the adults, which have a much more, you've established your style. Like it's not
Hmm.
going to change as often. You're not going to see them fluctuate through different looks. So it's interesting that that's both true of the villains and the demons and the adults
Right.
versus the younger characters.
Yeah. We do see it a little bit in Giles, but I think we only see that in Giles because he goes through those transitions of losing
Yes,
his job and,
right.
and all of that stuff. And I'm telling you, Giles looks, in season 7, when Giles comes back, he looks great.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was it barn coat that he wears.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah, I love all his looks. I think my least favorite is like, I believe this is go in the season somewhere in season 5 when
Mhm.
he's helping Buffy to train. He does like a button down with a long sleeve tee underneath.
Mm.
It just kind of feels a little old manish. Um, it's got dad vibes going on.
I love his stuff in like in season 2. Especially
Oh,
like
his
when he,
three-piece suits,
yeah, his like suits,
love.
and especially when I'm sorry, when he takes his coat off and he's just like, when he's been in the library library all night and he's just like there in his shirt and his vest and he's like all crumpled looking. I'm like, oh,
Yes.
Giles. I see what
Or when
Willis
he
sees
like
in
takes
you.
it off, he's got the rolled up sleeves.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All for it.
That's a look.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Mm, sorry. Um,
Absolutely.
you're the original Zaddy. So I do. So there's something that came up that I found really interesting about some of Buffy's looks. Well, it's specifically about Graduation Day Part Two. Um, and
Gotcha.
again, I think this goes back to the storytelling. That this idea of when they were, they're all in their like caps and gowns and all of this
Right.
other stuff. Um, that you know, that she becomes this leader. Like we see in that moment that she can be a real leader, that she can lead an army. Like
Hmm.
this is a woman who can command an army and galvanize people together. And so that when they all take off their graduation robes, and then there she is, like as this hero warrior standing there.
Hmm.
I think it's just such a great it's such a great moment where you're like, and it's again, it's that thing of like casting off high school and going into battle into the real world. I think even little things like that I think um, are so telling um, to 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 the storytelling that they're trying to do in the in the show.
Yeah. Well, and talk about an episode where leather tells a story.
Oh yeah, yeah,
I mean, between when she goes to confront Faith and not the red leather pants,
yeah. Those
and
pants. Yeah.
yeah, and then she ends up in the black leather pants and the maroon
Hmm.
jacket for the actual battle.
And I think that that's sort of that showing of Buffy growing up, and Buffy,
Hmm.
and leather being sort of a thicker material, it being sort of a tougher material,
Yeah.
something hard that is not necessary. I mean, leather can rip and break, and it can, you can penetrate it, but it's not a cotton thing. It's not the flowy lace things, or or chiffon dress or a shift dress or whatever that she normally wears. It's tough. She's ready to do battle in that moment.
Yeah. Well, and it's also what's happening at that time. I mean, if you think about it, that's the year that the first Matrix comes out, and where you get this very, what we consider like a normal style of certain action films.
Hmm.
But that was like one of the earliest times it had been done
Hmm. Yeah.
using leather for that look. So
Yeah.
it's definitely kind of the time. It was definitely happening, in the film and television industry, in pop culture. So it speaks to how on brand or how on trend
Hmm.
the show was as well.
Yeah. There's some other moments too where Buffy's clothes sort of are filling in some of the um story around her, like. And I don't think is she wearing leather in this? I don't think she is. But in Checkpoint, when she
Hmm.
comes in, and the council's all there, and everybody is just like very formally dressed in suits, um, and the one has, the updo. Everybody's so like stiff and formal. And after she's done fighting with the Knights of Byzantium, uh, outside, and then she comes
Right,
in late. um you know she's very she's very casually dressed compared to everybody else in the room. um but as she's like the least dressed up person in the room, but is commanding the most amount of power. And so I think there
right,
is something to that she is able to like negotiate no matter what, because like because the power doesn't come from the clothes or the system that it comes from her. And
right.
there's the idea of the power suit and all of that stuff. Buffy doesn't need a power suit. She is the power. She will just walk in and her stylish yet affordable boots, and and command a room.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great example because especially you have all the stuffy watchers, even the women in their suits
Yeah, and
who
like,
present a front and are trying to, basically bullying her into being like, "Oh, we have the power. You ought to do what we say." And she
mhm,
finally realizes, no. And
yeah,
I don't need to wear that suit to tell you. I don't even need to wear my leather pants to tell you that.
right. I'm just like, I feel like she's wearing like a
She was wearing
sleeveless shirt.
a black sweater. I was just looking at some
Okay,
images. I don't know what she was wearing for pants, but yeah, it was. And well, she had a long coat. We could spend a whole episode discussing Buffy's coats,
the
okay?
coats
The coats and
alone.
the jacket. I
Gosh.
mean, that the money spent on those alone, like new one every episode. That's one of the things where I felt like, okay, she would not have that many coats because there's no way you'd be able to afford that.
Joyce is selling some art pieces at that
I
gallery.
know. And I was like, I'm okay with it. Like I can do suspension of disbelief on how many coats she has
Well,
because
yeah.
they're so great. They're
Oh
just
gosh.
so iconic and they set her style. And if I could afford and buy that many coats, I would 100% do it.
Oh my God, it would be amazing. It would be so great.
For me, I think one of the strongest moments, or maybe I should say, maybe the first time I really noticed during a full season of the costuming doing a story, or excuse me, supporting the storytelling is season 3 for Buffy
Mm,
because it's such a strong contrast to Faith. Faith
right.
comes in her darker looks and her dark lipstick and often wearing leather pants and or dark jeans and maybe having like combat boots on and her tough girl Boston vibe. And they choose to put Buffy in these much softer, often girly, a lot of lavender and lilac
Hmm.
to contrast. I mean, she looks gorgeous. I love so
Yeah.
many of those looks. She looks amazing in that lavender lilac. And those like softer dresses and a lot of like sweater knit or knit sweater sets, a lot of cardigans and, tank tops. And it's just to me that is like the first season that is the whole season for her just stands out as iconic.
Yeah.
As does Face look. Like you read like the contrast works so well.
Yeah. And you get the sense of who Faith is too
Yes.
with that. And Faith basically has a look. Like that's it.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like, it's the leather pants,
Right.
it's it's the white tank and the leather pants. Like that's Faith. Um,
Which is why it's such a big deal in that moment when the mayor gives her that
that
very
dress.
girly dress
Yeah, yeah.
with I think it's like little cherries or little red flowers.
Hmm.
I just remember having like a cute red pattern, but she puts it on and partly because Eliza plays it so well of being uncomfortable, of somebody doing something nice for her and changing her look
Hmm.
because he thinks she deserves better in his opinion,
Right.
in the mayor's opinion. I'm not saying that's my opinion. It does look awkward on her. Like you're just
It
like,
does, yeah.
what? You're like, and maybe partly too, it's not what really does look good on her.
It,
Like if you were gonna put her in a girly dress, maybe that was the wrong one. But like he was choosing it because that's to him what girliness,
hmm what she
if he had a
deserves.
daughter,
Right.
that's what he'd want her to wear. So it's amazing how again
Yeah.
that
Because
one change says so much in that scene.
every time I see that scene, I always think that is a god awful dress on her.
Oh, it's
Like
terrible.
it's terrible. But I think but it's also supposed to be that way. I think it's
Yeah.
a purposeful choice because I'm like, God, because when you, especially like if you look at like Elijah Dushku's style is she's just also kind of like has such a great sense of style.
Yeah.
And when you look at the stuff that she wears herself,
Hmm.
that dress ain't it. Like
No.
that's not it at all.
It's
Uh,
almost actually a little too old for her.
yeah.
I would expect to see someone a bit older wearing that. Like it feels like an older woman's take on Laura Ashley or that kind of vibe.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's very it's a little bit school librarian vibe. Not saying that
Yeah.
that's how librarians dress. I'm just saying that's like the impression, sort of the pop culture impression.
It's a terrible dress.
Yeah,
But she carries off the awkwardness
she does.
very well. But
Yeah.
maybe she's just honestly feeling awkward
Yeah.
in that dress.
I have to say too, one of the things that I really like is the evolution of Xander's style as he
Mm,
grows up and he gets a professional job, and how his wardrobe really changes to fit that transition and then the work that he's doing.
hmm Yeah.
Really too, particularly in season 7 when he um I can't remember if they outright say it or you just get the sense from the scenes you see of him um on a construction site, but he definitely is in some sort of leadership position.
Yeah.
And he has to, I think at one point he has to wear a suit to meet with clients and it's great to see him go through that evolution and have that confidence develop from the awkward, dorky kid, with the bright colored shirts that I think he was just choosing as a way to stand out.
Right.
Not because he necessarily was like, this is what's cool.
Right. Yeah. I think he just was like, whatever, this is,
Yeah.
um, you can definitely tell in Xander's rise to power,
Yeah.
as it were. Because and it's never really clear. But he did it super fast. He like became like the head of a construction crew really, really quickly. Um, but yeah, going into the suits and all of that stuff, and what he wore and or what he didn't wear and Go Fish. You see sort of his lack of clothing. Um, which is also, very much a choice. Like they were like, we've got to get these guys in Speedos and, it's got to be
Talk
the
about
right
an iconic
color.
look.
Yeah, right. Um, but this his whole like Xander grew up look,
Yeah.
like he wears big kids clothes now. Like he's got a grown person's job, where he's not out there, fighting and slaying and doing all of that stuff. And then you look at comparison to Willow, who also has
Hmm.
sort of that change and evolution based on her sort of profession,
Right.
as of witch, and then it becomes very much like this is what a witch and a lesbian looks like in the 90s.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah.
Which is so, you know, eh, does it hit the mark? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know if it always hits the mark. But I mean, again, I think there's a lot of you can see the growth and change and all of that, and nobody can rock a bucket hat like Allison Hannigan. So,
I know, right? Well, one of the things I really like about Willow's costume evolution is her initial costumes, her initial outfits. Not only do they have like the crazy textures or the crazy patterns, but they're like paired with each other in a
mhm,
way that shouldn't work, but weirdly works. Like, I don't know that it would work for anyone else, but because of who that character is, it does. I'm not saying it's like the most, it would be considered high fashion or anything, but like it works for her as an outfit. And that combination of pattern and color and overlaying pattern and color continues as her look evolves, probably till about season 7. I feel like in
mhm,
season 7, she becomes much more like just a simple cute top, a simple cute pants. Like
mhm,
it's not so multi-layered colors and
right,
patterns, which I still like her look in season 7.
mhm,
Um, but I think it shows you like that's an element of who she is.
right,
It wasn't just, her mom might have been like shopping for her, but she still was like making her own choices.
mhm,
It could speak to that. And so when she had more freedom to do that, she still continued to do it, but it evolved into whatever that next phase is. And again, as you said, like as she took on more things, as she became more centered in her magic as she came out and developed her relationship with Tara. All of that impacted how she made those costume and clothing choices.
You know, that's a good point. And like something that said about that really got me thinking about sort of the layering of all of that stuff
Mm-hmm.
because and I think this is a testament to the costumers because
Mm-hmm.
it takes a keen eye and it takes someone who really knows what they're doing to take all those patterns and those different fabrics and mix and match them in a way that look good on camera, right? It has to look good on camera, one, um, but also sort of like tells the story of who this person is. And it kind of, I mean, and to be honest, I think a lot of Willow's looks, especially early on, are super like cute and kind
Mm-hmm.
of fashionable. And I think especially today, if we saw something like that, it would be considered sort of like this like cute retro-y sort of
Mm-hmm.
look that's actually really on trend now.
Yeah.
So in
Yeah,
a
that's
way,
probably true.
maybe Willow was the trendsetter of the group more so than anybody. While everyone else was on trend,
Right.
Willow was setting the trend.
Yep. That would be awesome. I love that idea.
I'm sure that
Well,
wasn't intentional, but maybe that's what's happening.
no, it's true. Well, and as she particularly going into the college years, where her look became that very like witchy Earth Mother
Hmm.
lesbian vibe. I mean, it's also of that time where like
Yeah,
I feel like there was a, you know, Renaissance Fair was big in the 90s, and then you had Lilith Fair, and you
yeah,
had, the return again of like elements of the 70s, which we think of disco, but a lot of that Earth Mother vibe was early 70s. Like
yeah.
disco didn't come till like the late 70s. You
Right.
kind of forget unless you study that a lot of trends overlap. Like
Hmm.
it's not like 1970 starts and it's like disco and 1980 comes and it ends and it's like punk and new wave. No, no, no. Like we all flow into each other. Um, so that's, that was definitely the trend happening. So it makes sense the outfits that Willow was wearing
Yeah.
fit into that vibe.
I mean, I even had a flowy peasant skirt in the 90s. Like I had one of those like, long skirts, those long flowy things
I
that I
did. I
would
had
have.
like a patchwork quilt, long flowy skirt. I love that skirt.
Those are the best things ever. They are
Oh my God.
so
I loved it.
comfortable. They are
Yeah.
so freaking comfortable. I would wear them during the summer and I'd be like, y'all, this is great. Guys, let's start wearing some long skirts. They're fantastic. I'm telling you.
Yeah, exactly. I, the other thing I always struck me about Buffy's costuming, and they obviously all the costuming, particularly for the main characters as they grow, like spoke to where they were in the series in the season, but none more so than to me than Buffy. Like she
Mhm.
really stood out. Like if I think back, it's her costuming and how it represented where she was in the season.
Mhm.
So that, we get into very like a modern take on the 70s look in season 5.
Right.
And then obviously, and then going back to season 4, you have a lot of that crimped hair
Oh,
in
yeah,
season 4.
the crimped hair was a moment.
It was. It
It
was
wasn't
very
her
like
best
on
look.
trend, but like yes. Um,
Why did we do that?
I know, right? Yes. But particularly for me, like season 5, but then it's I get the vibe like the strongest in season 6 and season 7, where they go incredibly monochromatic
Hmm.
on her
Yeah.
because she's such in a space where she's dealing with so much emotional weight. That adult transition. I think it really speaks to the fact that like emotionally she has doesn't have color in her life,
Hmm.
and then later when she gets to a better place at the end of season 6 going to season 7, they lighten it up a little bit, but then again when the first makes his appearance and Giles starts bringing all the potentials, the weight is on her again. So it like we go back to that monochromatic look. I mean, the look is fabulous. She wears it
Sure.
well. I love the literal clothes. I don't mind the monochromatic look, but it just speaks to her emotional state
Right.
so clearly. It just again, that just speaks to like how incredible the costuming is. And that's during a period of transition because season 6 was Cynthia Bergstrom's last season.
Hmm.
And then you bring two new designers in. And honestly, like if I hadn't read that, I would not have thought there was two different costume designers in the final season from the person who had been doing the last 4 seasons.
Yeah,
That's,
I don't think I realized that.
I didn't either,
That
not
there
until
was a
recently.
I knew there was somebody after Cynthia, but I didn't realize that there was a fourth one that came in. When you said that earlier, I was like, oh, I didn't.
Yeah.
I thought that there was only three um costume designers. So
Yeah, I just the costuming on the show is just so brilliant. I know I've said it like 1,000 times, but
yeah,
it's like every time I watch something either comes back to me that I've forgotten about it or I catch something new and it's just like this is so well done. Like
yeah,
I hope people who do like if you study costuming in college, like I hope this show is used because I really think it should be.
yeah. It's really great. Even the outlandish costumes that are
Yeah.
like the bridesmaids costumes or whatever are so
Yes.
great. And that
So,
Double Maid
so great.
Palace outfit is
Yes.
chef's kiss. Like it's perfection with the freaking cow on the head, like the
Yeah.
whole thing.
The
Like
cow chicken
the
thing.
cow chicken thing on the head is so ridiculous. It's so stupid that it's like, what? Because actually, because nobody really in fast food has like they have the little visors, but
Right.
like it's not to that extreme. And pushing it just like that much
Yes.
further
Yes.
to just humiliate her even more
Yeah.
is to make her
Yeah.
feel like a tool is just it's perfect.
I know. So should we discuss a couple iconic looks that stand out to us personally? I don't know if you
Yeah.
have any.
I mean, I do. I have some iconic looks.
I mean,
Uh,
we've
uh,
discussed a lot of
we
them, but
have. So
you
just
know,
looks that stand out, right? Like looks that
yeah,
are
or like
just
favorite looks or, for
uh
anyone. It doesn't have to be Buffy.
okay, so oh gosh.
Like if somebody were like, when you think of Buffy, what looks do you think of? Like, what are the few that come to mind? It just, you don't have to name every season or every character.
Yeah. I think like for like when I think of Buffy, I think of like her in those red leather pants for sure. I think
Oh
like
gosh,
that
yeah.
um is one. Her and her like Slayer 98 or
Oh,
her
the
Slayer
homecoming
the
dresses?
homecoming dresses are
Yeah, that was on my list. Both her and
wonderful.
Cordelia's.
Yeah, her and Cordelia's.
Yeah.
Um Anya's wedding dress
Oh my God, I forgot
is
about that. It's gorgeous.
gorgeous. It is
Yeah,
a beautiful wedding dress.
I know.
Um,
Every one of the like articles I was reading would talk about the Vera Wang that Buffy wore in The
uh-huh,
Angel's Dream, which is
uh-huh.
gorgeous. Don't get me wrong, but like
Yeah,
Anya's dress,
Anya's dress is
amazing.
amazing. And yeah, and es- especially with the little face mask
Oh my
that
God,
she has
so
on.
cute.
Again,
Yes,
it's just that touch of like I need to keep my puffy down, my
right.
puffy to face down. It's so good. It like as her little veil, it's so cute.
Yeah.
Um, that one is really great. Uh, I'm trying to think of. I mean. I'm gonna pivot here. Spike in that baby blue sweater.
Oh, you're talking about the beginning of season 7.
Seven.
I
Yeah.
don't like that shirt.
I like it. I really
I
like him in that.
I like the color. I don't like the fit of it. I don't like the 3/4 sleeves. I don't like the. Oh, it's one of the things I least like that he wears.
Yeah, so I do. I like that sweater.
No,
I
and I
think
appreciate it. It's just the color is great. I just I do not like it.
it's the
The
cut.
other
You
thing
said
of
it
his
was the cut
it's the cut. Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
cut of it.
I love the color, but the cut. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, and the other thing I hate, and actually this is done so well because it says so much, but it is like it just is not a look I like. Is a lot of Spike season 6 look, particularly with all the jewelry and
Mm.
like the like way low open shirts.
Oh yeah, because he's trying to be all
It just
super
is it
sexy.
yeah, it just comes off as so like easy to me,
Uh-huh.
which is like exactly what it's supposed to be doing. Like it
Right.
totally does its job.
Yeah.
But I'm just like,
Little
it
Spike.
makes me feel awkward and uncomfortable. And I'm like, well, you're doing your job, but like, um,
But I
so
do want that duster though. I want that
yeah, the duster is
duster.
cool.
I
I
I
mean,
need that in
in
my
spite of
life.
where he gets it, it is super
Yeah.
cool.
I need it in my
Um,
life. Uh,
so, oh, go ahead. We're gonna, did
no,
you have,
no, I was gonna ask you what your
yeah, so you named, like I said, we both had I had the homecoming dresses too. And we already talked about the overalls of pain.
yes.
Uh,
They're so
for me,
comfy.
definitely the Prophecy Girl spring
Mm-hmm.
fling dress. Um, it's not necessarily like the cutest dress. I mean, it's cute.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely like of that moment. But again, it's like so iconic. And then
Uh-huh.
the to pair such a like feminine, flowy dress and a white dress with like that badass leather jacket.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
just, and then she has like the oh my God, what's the weapon she has that she goes down with?
The crossbow.
Crossbow. Thank you. I couldn't think of it. It's just like that says Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I mean, it
Yeah.
tells you who she is
I mean,
in that one look. It's very, very cool.
I
I love,
have her in the background over
yeah, there
here.
you go.
That's the look that
Exactly.
she's
Exactly. I love the sushi pajamas.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And it's used in such a funny way. So I actually have a friend who sews, and she made me a pair of pajama pants with that
Hmm.
fabric. So I have half of the sushi pajama outfit.
Oh.
So that was really cool. When Spike shows up in Tabula Rasa in the tweed with the hat,
With the hat on, with
with
the
the ear
ears.
flaps, so
That's
iconic.
good one too, yeah.
Yeah. And I just, to me, like, I love Buffy's look in season 5. I love the hair. I love the jewelry. Like, it
Hmm.
just is probably my favorite season of her looks.
Hmm.
So like to me, the whole season's
Yeah.
iconic, but I really love that season. I mean, there's a million, but
There's
oh, and
so
then of
many.
course we didn't talk about this episode. We've talked about it in another episode for a different reason. But the maroon outfit that Cordelia wears when she comes back from the hospital
Hmm.
after
Oh
Lover's Walk. I was like, what was the episode?
after she gets stabbed.
into
Yeah.
the Wish.
Yeah.
That outfit, I mean, come on. It is
Hmm.
so amazing and she wears it so well.
That blue outfit, that blue dress. It's like a blue like
She may have. I don't
I
remember
think
that.
so. I think she wears
The
that first.
maroon just
Or maybe that's in the
overtakes
Wish. Maybe
everything.
that's in I don't know. Um yeah, but that maroon is great. Yeah. Um and she has some really cute looks, like going back through. She's got a lot of good ones.
She does.
Also would be remiss not to talk about the fashion queen herself, but Glory.
Oh gosh, of course.
Glorificus in that red dress.
The red dress. I was just gonna say the red dress. Yep.
Um, and just like the closet of clothes that she,
Yep.
which
And
was,
shoes.
and shoes, which I feel was basically like the costume department was like, here is storage. We will put it on set.
Absolutely.
Here's what we have. Yeah,
Well, and it's such a like it shows it also again how costuming is used. It immediately she stands out from past villains.
right.
You know something's going to be different about her
Mhm.
because well, the past villains may have had an iconic look. As we said, it's very unchanging. Like the mayor wears the same types of suits.
Mhm.
Spike is always in the same outfit. Angel's basically always in black, particularly on Buffy. He gets a more expansive wardrobe on his show. But yeah,
He
then
gets
Glory
to
comes
wear
in.
light black
Yeah.
and a slightly darker black.
So true. So yeah, her looks are amazing.
Yeah. Um,
Well,
I'm
and then like her in the scrubs when she changes from Ben to
yeah,
her, while like that stands out because it's so you're like, oh, that's
it's
she's
so
not in the
weird.
right clothing.
Yeah, and like I just when they show this is crazy too because when you think about like Glory and when they're in her closet and we're in Glory's closet, the amount of the amount of work that the costume department has to do in order to like fill the closet with
Yeah,
all the shoes and all of that stuff, like that's a part of it too. Like it's like we gotta fill in because you can't just throw any old thing on the rack into her closet. Like it all has to be
right.
something that she would wear.
Yeah,
And that was a huge closet
yeah,
with so many clothes and so many shoes.
yeah. That was amazing. And then I also think about, and this may be more because of the moment than the actual outfit, but Willow's outfit when she goes to confront Glory after
Yeah.
Glory brain sucks Tara.
Mm.
She's in that sort of, I believe it's like a purple black
Mm-hmm.
combination, and it feels very 90s witch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A little bit kind of like nod to elements of the craft, nods to sort of Lilith Fair lesbian
Right.
girl power,
That's
which
the
was great. It's an iconic moment for her. So I think the fact that the clothing matched is perfect.
right. Do you have like a least favorite look, or do you have like a look that you're like, oh no, they should never?
Oh, good question. Not so much a least favorite. I know this is probably going to be like people are going to be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe she said this." But I have to say, just because he had the one look for so long, I really loved in season 7 when Spike came back and he didn't have his coat because he had left it with Buffy and he was
Hmm.
wearing like the jean jacket and the jeans. Like I love that look just because it was something new and different. So I was
Mm.
actually a little sad costume wise when he got his coat back,
When he
only
went to
because that like we went back to that again, like there was no mixing it
right.
up. I really loved that look. It's not that I love his iconic Spike look, but it was nice to have something different just because, partly too because, and I get it, like that tells a whole story when he gets his coat back, but it does show that he had changed.
Hmm.
Again, it speaks to the fact that there was something different about him. Um, because of the soul and what he went through. So anyway,
Yeah.
um but yeah, as far as like one, I didn't I'm sure there is, but nothing that stands out as much as the stuff I like.
Right.
Um I guess probably what stands out, not so much as like, I don't like it because it's not fashionable or it's not cute, but I think there were definitely moments throughout the series where there was cultural appropriation
Mm.
with clothing. You know, thinking the episode with Empada and some of the costumes that the
Mm.
students wore that now would like not
Oh,
fly. Like you don't dress up as an Eskimo,
Eskimo. Right. Yeah.
and
That is
Giles
cringy.
doing the sombrero and the poncho for the
Yeah.
Halloween costume. Um, and then I had forgotten about again until I was like doing the research and looking at articles that had like iconic outfit lists. Tara had a very Indian, South Asian outfit when she was speaking for the first Slayer in
Oh, yeah.
Restless.
Yeah.
So not only do you have this like pretty white woman speaking for the first Slayer, who is portrayed as the primitive,
Right.
now she's wearing another culture's outfit.
Right.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it was gorgeous, but and not to say there aren't ways that people can't embrace another culture, but there's so much more that goes into it that
r-
obviously
Right.
the show
And
was not doing, and the show was not taking on other, it was very white as we've discussed
right.
in the series. So
Yeah. And
that's definitely an issue.
those two examples that you brought up about like the her wearing the, the quote unquote Eskimo outfit,
Yeah.
the and the sombrero, those are very sort of kind of cringy moments because it's
Yeah.
like, oh God, why did
Yeah.
we go there?
Yeah.
Um, I think those are probably my two least favorite
Yeah.
things. You know, there's stuff about Dawn that I don't necessarily like. It's like but it's not terrible.
Yeah.
So I think as Dawn grows up and gets more mature, I think her costuming works a little bit better. But yeah, I would say those two are definitely my least favorite for sure.
Yeah. Versus Giles wearing the wizarding outfit when the magic box opens.
Right. That's hilarious.
That was amazing. That was awesome.
That's funny. Stop
There is no
appropriating
cultural
wizards.
appropriation of wizard
Right.
community.
Now we're gonna get emails from wizards
I
going,
know. Sorry, Pete.
actually,
Sorry.
actually.
And then because we're discussing, the impact of the series in these conversations, we both found in doing our research that, particularly I think coming into the 20th anniversary of the series, the premiere of the series, there were quite a few accounts on Instagram that started popping up of going back to the fashion from the show. So there's been a revival in the last, 5, 6, 7 years of the fashion, which is also in line with the fact that like every 20 years, the previous, um, 20 years ago, the decades looks start coming back into the current decade as well. So that's on par with that as well.
Yeah, there are a lot of like Instagram accounts out there that show like the different Buffy fashions and things like that. There is, I think somewhere on TikTok, I found it once and I need to see if I can find it again. But there's a TikTok content creator that will find a Buffy look and recreate it and hand make it like from scratch, and walks you through the process of of how she's making the outfit. The last one I saw was one of those lilac dresses that she wore in season 3. And she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna make this. Um, I'm gonna like make this from scratch and show you how I do it." So I think there is so much. There's so much out there, and it shows the cultural impact that the fashion on the show has, how important it is when all of these content creators, 25 years later, are still invested in doing all of this other stuff. When places like when magazines like Vogue and
Mm-hmm.
Harper's Bazaar are who are like fashion magazines and are talking about the fashion of the show, like that has a cultural impact. That means it
Yeah.
touched people in a way that is still meaningful even today. Because some of the articles I was reading were written as as soon as like 2020, like 2021.
Yeah.
So uh, the looks are still slaying today.
Absolutely. Well, and also I was going to say shout out to all the fans who've either recreated looks for a costume or just, as you were saying, that TikTok creator,
Hmm.
just creating it to wear, like because
Yeah,
they love the look. Fans have been doing that since probably the beginning of the series. So shout out to OG fans.
yeah. And
No, I think
welcome
it's
new
awesome. I always
ones.
love like seeing the way people do it and the way they get creative with it if they don't have access to the exact look, but they manage to still pull pieces together that get pretty close to it, and seeing those
Right,
photos out there on social media, it's really cool. I love the creativity. Again, it's like all the other elements, fan art, fan fiction, fan costuming. It's so cool how the show just inspires people to find their creative side.
so any final thoughts on fashion, on the fashionista that is Buffy, the Slayer of the Vampire?
I just got to up my coat game apparently.
Right? For
Yeah.
real, yeah. Ugh, that slow motion coat, the coat that she
Oh,
wears when
oh
she's
my gosh, how did we forget that
walking
one?
around the corner, when she's running around the corner. Man,
Yes. In
iconic.
Becoming.
Iconic.
Yes.
It is, oof. Yeah. Bring back the overalls. I'm bringing back comfy overalls.
All right, guys, we're starting a new campaign.
Coats
Giles
and
is leading
overalls.
it. Make overalls fashionable again.
We're bringing back long coats and overalls. Here we go. Our contribution to fashion from the two people who have admitted are not
Yeah.
very fashionable. So perhaps you shouldn't take fashion advice
Right.
from either of us.
Oh, goodness. Well, we definitely want to hear from you if you have favorite looks or what you think of the costuming and the fashion and the styles of all the characters on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Or if you recreated a look
Yes.
for like, for Halloween or anything like that. And we would love to see all of those looks. And you can send them to us, post them on our Facebook page at A Buffy Podcast, or reach out to us and slide into our DMs at A Buffy Podcast on Instagram.
Or you can email us at abuffypodcast@gmail.com.
Well, thanks so much, everyone. I really appreciate you all. We really appreciate you all joining us today. And join us next week. Come back, and if you like what you hear, please like, subscribe, and download, and leave us a review.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone.
All right. Bye.
Bye.